Hi everyone, my name's Jack Rodgers. I'm a painter from Brisbane, and I've got a show up at Wollongabba Art Gallery at the moment called Cheap Seats. It runs till the 2nd of April, so I hope you didn't have a look, but I'm just going to do a quick little chat just to tell you what's in the show and what I've been thinking about. Cheap Seats kind of started for me as a body of work. It was kind of a bit of a response to like being in lockdown. I'm not a total hack, the work isn't about COVID, but it was a response to music venues being shut, people not being able to come together to celebrate things that I'm really interested in. I'm a musician as well. I play a lot of live music, and a lot of the best connections I've got with people are because of that. So yeah, it was just sad, and it kind of freaked me out, not knowing back then how much, whether we'd ever get back to that. So it was kind of a response to that. So the situation made me nostalgic about going to gigs. Not really for gigs that I'd been at or played, but gigs that I wished I'd seen. And from that point, I started thinking more specifically about Australia, and sort of to broaden the scope as well to more, not just gigs, but sort of significant events. So I painted things like the Whitlam dismissal, and the Beatles at Festival Hall in Brisbane. And so by the time I came around to preparing for the show, it kind of became really clear to me that I needed to really narrow the scope. And so that's when I kind of zeroed in on Brisbane, Queensland nostalgia, stuff I'd seen and heard about in my own hometown. So I started collecting photos more from like the John Oxley Library at State Library, and Queensland State Archives, and everything else I kind of just got from books, YouTube, Instagram, and the subject matter, if you think of it in terms of stories, I guess really came to me sort of one or two ways. Either I would hear the story and then go find a photo, or I would see a photo and then find out the story. If I heard a cool story and there wasn't a photo that matched it, I would try to find sort of the next best source. And that's kind of where I like to play with that, because obviously I'm playing between fact and fiction, and I'm presenting these things kind of as documentary, but of course they're not. The accuracy of the stories, it's as accurate as someone kind of telling you a story in a pub or whatever. For me, the work is it's mostly about personalising my dislocation from the events. So I find it interesting that it isn't photojournalism and it's not documentary. It's more actually about imagining things, true events that you weren't at. And it's about creating a nostalgia for something that I didn't see. Talking at the opening to people who were at the events, who were a bit older than me, that went to venues that have now closed down or festivals that don't run anymore, who were able to tell me firsthand stuff, which I found really interesting. Cheap Seats deals a lot with kind of, I guess, identity and subculture, and how we let subculture stand in for our personalities sometimes. I tried to zero back in on myself and why I painted the specific events that I chose, and where I got to with it is I sort of narrowed it down to sport, beer, and rock and roll. That is the sort of holy trinity of Australian masculinity, whether we choose to subvert it or enjoy it, or question it, it's evergreen for me. It's something that I always go back to and choose to sort of take the piss out of. Yeah, the show from my perspective is mostly, I guess, Brisbane history through the lens of sport, beer and rock and roll. But to go back to the identity of the actual subjects in the paintings, I was asked at the opening who the people were, any one particular person. And I get why people ask that, because we're sort of trained as viewers to look at a portrait subject and ask who it is. Portraiture is really reserved for important people in our culture. So my practice at the moment, I'm mostly interested in painting strangers, and I want to move away from the burden of creating a likeness, so that when I paint, because you've never seen the person, there's less burden of oh, it looks like that, oh, it doesn't look like that, and it's more about creating a quick connection with the actual person. The best description or parallel that I can find to describe the process is a pastel resist, which is like a fabric printing technique. So the first thing I do is I lay down just a flat plane of colour on masonite, and then I draw. Once that's dry, I draw on that with oil pastel, and then I paint straight over that with another layer of house paint. And then once that's dry, then I use a rag with terps on it to lift the oil out from under the acrylic, because the acrylic doesn't react to the terps, but the oil does. So you're just left with the line, and it's the first layer colour is what you can see. So you get all the benefits of the kind of messy gestural kind of shape that an oil pastel makes, without the actual grease, and so what you're left with is a very graphic, clear, crisp line. I came across it by accident. I was just trying to get a drawing off a painting that I'd done, and it had sort of been painted over slightly, so I could see that it had cut this line out. And yeah, I just really like the sort of graphic. It kind of bounces off itself nicely, it's kind of messy and naive, but then it's also very crisp. Yeah, thanks very much for watching. The show's up till the 2nd of April. Have a look in person at Wollongabba, at Wollongabba Art Gallery, or hop on the website. There's full documentation of the show, sizes, dimensions, prices. Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Have a good time. Bye.